My name is Camila Vega, and I'm 18 years old. I live in a quiet suburban town in Oregon, but it hasn't always been this way. 5 years ago, on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, everything changed. My 13th birthday, something every girl looks forward to, became the beginning of my worst nightmare. I haven't told this story to many people, but it's something I think about every single day. It all started when my parents decided to throw me a big birthday party to celebrate my transition into teenagehood. They rented a hall in our neighborhood and invited my closest friends and family. My mom even hired a clown, Smiley Sam, to keep the younger kids entertained. I didn't think much of it at the time. After all, clowns were supposed to be fun, right? Sam showed up in this gaudy costume, with a huge painted smile and brightly colored hair. He carried a giant gift box that he said was just for the birthday girl. His entrance was loud and goofy, and everyone seemed to love him. But from the moment I saw him, something about him felt off. At first, he did typical clown stuff, juggling, making balloon animals, and cracking bad jokes. The kids laughed and played, but I couldn't help noticing how his eyes lingered on me. Even when he was surrounded by my cousins, his gaze always found its way back to me. I thought maybe I was imagining it. After all, it was my party. Later, it was time to open presents. My friends and family surrounded me as I unwrapped gifts, squealing with excitement. When I got to the large box Smiley Sam brought, everyone leaned in closer. I remember thinking it was probably some elaborate balloon creation or a toy. But when I pulled off the wrapping paper and opened the lid, the room went silent. Inside was a porcelain doll, dressed like a clown. Its pale face was painted with exaggerated features, red lips, blue tears, and a haunting smile. But it wasn't just the doll that sent chills down my spine. There was a note taped to its chest. In bold, uneven handwriting, it read, "For my future princess." My dad's face turned red with anger. He grabbed the note and stormed over to Smiley Sam, demanding an explanation. The clown just laughed and said it was all part of the act. His laughter echoed in the hall, and something about it made my skin crawl. My mom quickly ended the party after that. That night, I tried to forget about the doll and the note. My dad threw them both in the trash, and we all agreed it was just a bad joke. But as I lay in bed, my phone buzzed. I thought it was one of my friends texting about the party, but the message made my heart stop. It was from an unknown number. The text read, "You looked beautiful today, Camila. I can't wait for us to celebrate alone next year." My hand shook as I showed the message to my parents. My dad called the police immediately, but there wasn't much they could do. The number was untraceable. We changed my phone number the next day, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. A week later, we found out who Smiley Sam really was. His real name was Gregory Banks, an ex-convict with a history of stalking teenage girls. My parents didn't tell me all the details, but I overheard enough to know he was dangerous. We moved out of town shortly after that, trying to leave the nightmare behind. For years, I tried to move on. But every birthday, I felt this lingering dread. Even as I turned 16, then 17, I couldn't help but look over my shoulder, half expecting him to show up. On my 18th birthday, just when I thought the past was behind me, a package arrived at our door. It was wrapped in the same colorful paper as the box from 5 years ago. My heart raced as I tore it open. Inside was another porcelain doll, identical to the first. Its painted smile seemed wider this time, almost mocking me. My breath caught in my throat as I noticed the note tucked into its tiny hand. It read, "5 years have passed, but I haven't forgotten. See you soon." I screamed, and my parents came rushing into the room. My dad called the police again, but just like before, there was nothing they could do. Gregory Banks had disappeared after his release from prison, and no one knew where he was. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made me jump, and every shadow outside my window looked like him. I felt trapped, unable to escape the fear that had haunted me for so long. In the following weeks, I started noticing strange things. A car parked down the street for hours. A figure in a hoodie standing across from my school. One day, I found another note slipped under our door. Soon, my princess. We installed cameras around the house, but they didn't catch anything. It was as if he knew how to stay out of sight. I started carrying pepper spray everywhere and refused to go anywhere alone. My parents wanted to move again, but I knew it wouldn't matter. Gregory Banks had found us once. He would find us again. To this day, I don't know what he's waiting for or why he's doing this to me. My birthday, something that used to bring me so much joy, is now a day I dread. I live in constant fear, haunted by a clown who refuses to let me go. My name is Samuel Rios. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Springfield, Illinois. I've been a clown for hire since I was 20, doing birthday parties, fairs, and events. It's not the most glamorous job, but it paid the bills. Until recently. People stopped hiring clowns as much. I guess it's because of all those creepy clown stories online. Whatever the reason, I had to find other ways to make money. That's when I started offering photography services. I still use my clown costume, thinking it would be a unique touch for themed photo shoots. I advertised my services on Craigslist and even got a few gigs. Moms looking for something quirky for their kids' birthdays or couples wanting weird engagement photos. It wasn't much, but it helped. About 2 weeks ago, I got a message from a woman named Clarissa. She wanted photos of her son, Jamie, at Lakeview Park. She said he loved clowns and thought the costume would make him smile. The job sounded easy enough, and the pay was good, so I agreed. We scheduled it for a Saturday afternoon. When I arrived at the park, the place was nearly empty. The trees cast long shadows over the walking paths, and the lake shimmered under the pale sunlight. I spotted Clarissa near a bench. She was a tall woman with sharp features and long, dark hair pulled into a messy bun. She waved when she saw me. "Samuel?" she asked, her voice soft but hurried. "Yes, that's me," I said, adjusting my camera bag. She looked around nervously, then said, "Jamie ran off while I was waiting for you. He does this sometimes, but I'm worried he might have gone too far this time. Can you help me look for him?" Her request caught me off guard. I wasn't there to play hide and seek, but something about her desperation made me agree. "Sure," I said. "Where did you see him last?" She pointed toward the lake. "He loves the water. Maybe he went that way." We walked along the shoreline, calling Jamie's name. I kept glancing at Clarissa. She seemed jittery, her eyes darting around like she was expecting someone to jump out at her. It made me uneasy. About 10 minutes into our search, I spotted something near the edge of the water. It was a tiny blue sneaker. I picked it up and showed it to her. "Is this Jamie's?" Clarissa's face went pale. She nodded but didn't say a word. Something felt off. The shoe looked like it had been there for a while, muddy and half covered in leaves. I decided to call the police. "We need help," I told her. "If he's in trouble, we can't do this alone." Before she could argue, I dialed 911. The operator took down the details and assured me an officer would be there soon. Clarissa didn't seem relieved. If anything, she looked more nervous. While we waited, I noticed her bag sitting on the bench where we'd first met. It was open just enough for me to see the handle of a large kitchen knife. My stomach tightened. "Clarissa," I said slowly, "why do you have a knife in your bag?" She froze, her eyes locking onto mine. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she gave a shaky laugh. "It's for protection," she said. "You can't be too careful these days." The way she said it made my skin crawl. When the police arrived, I handed them the shoe and explained what had happened. They asked Clarissa a few questions, but she was evasive, her answers vague. Something about her didn't sit right with the officers either because they asked to search her bag. Clarissa's demeanor changed instantly. She went from nervous to furious, accusing the cops of wasting time. "My son is out there," she screamed, "and you're worried about my bag." But they insisted, and when they opened it, my heart sank. Inside was the knife I'd seen earlier, and it was covered in what looked like dried blood. Clarissa turned to me, her face twisted with rage. "You did this," she shouted. "You killed him." I stumbled back, stunned. "What are you talking about?" She pointed at me, her voice rising. "He dressed as a clown to lure my son. Look at him. He's a freak." The officers looked at me with suspicion, and I realized what was happening. She was framing me. I stood there frozen, trying to make sense of what was happening. The officers were eyeing me now like I was some sort of monster. "This isn't true," I stammered. "She's lying. I just got here to take photos." She asked me to help look for her son. Clarissa broke into sobs, clutching her arms like she was scared of me. "You don't understand. He's dangerous. He took my Jamie." The officers asked me to sit down while they talked to her. I wanted to scream. This was insane. How could they believe her? But I knew better than to argue with the cops. One officer stayed with me while the other questioned Clarissa a few feet away. I tried to explain everything. How she contacted me for photos. How Jamie wasn't even there when I arrived, and how I found the shoe. But I could see the doubt in his eyes. The clown costume wasn't helping. Then something strange happened. The other officer returned, holding a small evidence bag. "We found this in her possession," he said. Inside was a bundle of Polaroid photos. He handed them to his partner, who flipped through them. His face hardened with each picture. "These are of you," he said, looking up at me. "What?" I asked, confused. They showed me the photos. In every one, I was wearing my clown costume, but these weren't pictures I'd posed for. They were taken from a distance, me walking to my car, unloading props, even sitting in my apartment. My stomach twisted. Someone had been watching me. "That's not mine," I said firmly. The officers exchanged a glance. "Did you know Clarissa before today?" "No. I swear, I've never seen her before this job." They moved back to Clarissa, and I could hear her sobbing louder now. She was saying things like, "He's been following us for weeks, and I found those in his bag." My head was spinning. This woman had been stalking me, and now she was trying to use that against me. After what felt like hours, they told us both to go to the station for more questioning. I didn't have a choice. I was already in too deep. At the station, things only got worse. The cops told me Jamie had been missing for 3 days. Clarissa had reported him earlier in the week, saying a man dressed as a clown was seen near their home. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Check my phone records, my texts," I pleaded. "She booked me for this gig. She's setting me up." It was clear the officers weren't sure who to believe. But then something finally broke the case wide open. Another officer burst into the room holding a folder. "You need to see this," he told his colleagues. They left me alone, but through the glass, I saw their expressions change. Moments later, they came back with Clarissa in handcuffs. "We searched her house," one of them said. "We found something you need to know about." Clarissa screamed, thrashing as they dragged her away. Her voice echoed down the hall. "He did it. He killed my boy. You're letting him go." But they ignored her. Later, I learned the truth. Inside her home, they found a hidden basement filled with horrifying evidence. Trophies from several missing children. Shoes, toys, even strands of hair. And there were photos too, but not just of me. Pictures of other clowns, likely others she had tried to frame. Clarissa was a serial killer. She had used the clown angle to distract from her crimes, painting herself as the victim to avoid suspicion. Her son Jamie wasn't missing. He was already dead. His body found buried in the woods behind her house. The knife she carried had my fingerprints on it, but only because she handed me her bag briefly at the park, pretending she needed help adjusting the strap. It was all part of her twisted plan to frame me. I was cleared of any involvement, but the damage was done. My reputation was ruined, and my business was over. Who would hire a clown tied to something so horrific? To this day, I can't look at a clown costume without feeling sick. The thought of how close I came to being blamed for her crimes keeps me up at night, and every time I hear about another missing child, I wonder how many more monsters like Clarissa are out there, hiding in plain sight.